much, Cam. It's a pleasure to be with you guys today. And at lunchtime, one of the first questions that I get when I'm outside of Colorado is, what is a television weather guy doing down here in our backyard talking about farming and ranching and weather? And the simple answer to that is, I got tired of not being able to cover the type of weather that I wanted to cover on the television to give you guys information that you can help out and plan your business with, not just in a day-to-day capacity, but seasonally. And Gator was talking about that in his presentation a little while ago, and I'll be real frank and upfront with you right out of the gate. We should be doing a whole lot better than what we are doing. And I think a large part of why we are not doing a lot better than we should be is the human element of weather forecasting is rapidly disappearing. How many of you have looked at your phone apps today to see what the forecast is going to be? Well, don't lie to me. It's a lot of people, okay, on a day-to-day basis. Do you know that there is absolutely zero human input in those forecasts? You wonder why the forecast is wrong so often? Okay? When we really get down to brass tacks about such things, it's really not that hard to understand. So what I like to do, knowing what I know about agriculture, because that's how I grew up, knowing what I know about meteorology and climatology, knowing what I know about computer modeling, and how incredibly inaccurate that they can be from time to time, you can't just do that and take it at face value. There has to be some sort of human element and a human that you trust, whether that be me or somebody else. I don't care. I just assume it'd be me because I know the business of agriculture and I can walk you through what's important. So all I want to do for you today is just simply show you some things that maybe you've never seen before. You guys are a pretty educated group down here in Texas, okay? There's a lot of stupid people up in Colorado. I have to talk a little slower for them and walk through things a little better for them. Anyway, not really. But I want you to think about some things today that maybe you haven't thought about before, and I want to interact with me at the end. You see something that you think we should be doing better, speak up. Don't just tell somebody, boy, that weatherman's a real idiot. Because then nothing gets done. Okay? Nothing gets done. Let's go ahead. I'm going to take you through 2016. And for those of you that don't think I can take you through the next 2 hours as far as weather's concerned, just humor me a little bit as we go through the next several months, okay? I post that slide, or one like it, on every single slide within my show for a reason. Because in the western high plains, we are just a couple of months removed from seeing rain. What happens? Dirt starts blowing, all right? And we've been living in some very good times recently. We have very short memories. Don't be one of those people, okay? Who's under the age of 35 in here? Please raise your hand. Okay? How many of you guys have hardcore drought plans that you can execute at a moment's notice? You should have been taking care of that this morning, or yesterday, or 4 months ago, or back in 2011. All right? You gotta get with the program here. You got it, and I'm going to show you the reason why. Let's look at the current status here. And because I'm a TV guy, I can't stay in one place for too long. That's the total precipitation over the last 90 days across Texas, New Mexico, and you can see a little bit of eastern Arizona right there. Okay, it's no big surprise that obviously East Texas is in the comfortable blue-purple shading right there. Okay, as it should be. Or oftentimes not, they get more rain. But some of the things I want to show you here, look at the Panhandle region. Look at West Texas. Obviously, the big winter storm that killed so many cattle a few weeks ago is largely responsible for seeing something like that. Good times, right? Good times as far as moisture is concerned. Some folks maybe still be struggling a little bit here in terms of reservoir capacity and whatnot, but overall, we are just in a whole lot better shape than we've been in over the past several years. The drought monitor, which most people are familiar with, and I show this just to put things in perspective here as far as drought. The whole state of Texas is essentially drought-free. However, this does not tell the whole story every single time, because it doesn't show you where it's been raining or how long it's been raining. Is anybody going to remember the summer of 2015 when it didn't rain in the state of Texas? Is anybody going to remember that? Few of you will be, okay? But in the grand scheme of things, is from a climatological perspective, when we go back and look at 2015, oh, it's the wettest year on record for the state of Texas. Does that tell the whole story?
No.
Absolutely not, okay? So, given what we know about plains climatology and weather patterns, in general, most of us are going to struggle with dry spells or drought at any one particular time during most years. And that is especially true out here in the western portion of the state, where it's obviously just a high desert. It all starts with sea surface temperatures. You guys have been beat to death with El Nino. You think you've been beat to death with El Nino talk, okay? I had to start talking about this thing about a year before it actually got here, because that's what I'm in the business of doing, all right? El Nino has been misrepresented. It has been mischaracterized. It has been just overblown by so much that there's a lot of people that really don't know what it's all about. And that's because there's a whole lot of bad science out there, and a lot of it is perpetuated by media, okay? But to break things down for you in simplistic terms, this area right here, or really anywhere on this map, where you're seeing reds or oranges, that's where sea surface temperatures are warmer than normal. And you can see the scale over here in degrees Celsius. There's a lot of warm water out here in the Pacific Ocean, especially here in what we call the El Nino regions or the ENSO regions, all right? Some changes that have been taking place here. The warmer than normal water is actually starting to shift a little bit farther west, and the water just off the west coast of South America, it's cooling down a little bit. It's cooling down. But this El Nino is still so strong that we are seeing the effects on our overall weather patterns here in the United States and really globally. That storm that went through New Mexico, West Texas a few weeks ago, classic El Nino storm. Contrary to some media opinions, that wasn't El Nino. Believe me, I hear it all the time. What time is El Nino going to hit my house? Okay. Well, we have a little bit of science work to do if we're going to answer that question for you. But some things that I want to draw your attention to is also right up here in the North Pacific. Who thinks California is important to agriculture? You all better be raising your hand. California and the state of California in general is incredibly important to the state of agriculture and what it means to us. As much as you guys think California is different from you, it isn't. California and Texas are a lot alike. Both incredibly agriculturally diverse, both having wide-ranging weather patterns at any different times of year. Both next to big bodies of water. Gulf of Mexico. It's one of the big reasons why I brought up desal when we were talking about it earlier. Because out in California, they're getting ready to launch one of the biggest desalinization efforts that our country has ever seen. It costs $2,000 per acre foot to desal, I think is what I read. Between $2,000 and $3,000. It's incredibly expensive. But they have a water problem out here because the whole North Pacific Ocean has been exceptionally warmer than normal for about the past couple of years. Here recently, the North Pacific has started to cool down a little bit. That's allowing storms to come into California, and that's why they're actually starting to see some drought relief. For us here in Texas and the Western High Plains, this whole warm Pacific thing, that's what fixed the drought. When the Pacific is warm, we usually do okay in terms of moisture here in the plain states, as you'll see here in just a moment. The Atlantic Ocean, warm as well. And I'm going to show you why that might actually help spell some trouble for us going forward. Who's heard of the Pacific Decadal Oscillation before? Few of you? This is a 20 to 30 year oscillation that takes place in the Pacific Ocean. where the water warms up and the water cools down. This is not tied to El Nino or La Nina. Those occur in much shorter time frames, okay? But this pattern over here on the left, that is when the Pacific Decadal Oscillation is in its cool or negative phase. This is all water that's cooler than normal, extending from the Gulf of Alaska all the way down the west coast. When the Pacific is cool, we have problems here in terms of not just a dry spell, but drought. And in some cases, long-term drought over a period of years. This is the pattern that we are in right now. Look pretty familiar from that sea surface temperature map that I showed you just a second ago. Okay, it should, because this is when the Pacific Decadal Oscillation is in a warm phase. Now again, these are 20 to 30 year cycles. There are little detours that happen here and there. Since about 2005, we've been in this over here on the left. We have briefly taken one of those detours to this over here on the right. But that detour isn't going to last much longer. That's when we go back to the prevailing pattern that's over here on the left, which is what got us in trouble in the first place. This is it in terms of numbers. Since 2005, I broke it down by months. Everywhere you see positive numbers, that's where the Pacific is warm as a whole. Where you see the negative numbers, that's where it's cold. Oh, look what happened here. Late 10, 11, drought finally started to relax a little bit, late 11 and 12, but then we got sucked right back into it, really until things flipped a little bit as we headed into 14. You want to know why Texas had the worst one-year drought in its recorded history? You really don't have to look a whole lot farther than this right here, when the Pacific was so chilly. Drought is the worst kind of thing, in my opinion, for agriculture. The absolute worst. It feeds on itself. It is nasty to get rid of. The longer it's present, the harder it is to get out. And its effects last for years after it's gone. Years. It's the worst thing, in my opinion, when it comes to agriculture. But here recently, we've been doing okay because the Pacific has actually been fairly warm. It has cooled somewhat here as we finish 2015, but it's still doing okay. Thus, we really haven't had problems with moisture around here lately. The Atlantic has a similar oscillation here. Negative numbers are cold phase, positive numbers are warm phase. Since 2005, there have been very, very few times when the Atlantic has actually been cooled down. But one of those times was again here in late 11 and 12, when the drought, quote unquote, started to break, at least for a period of time across Texas. Again here in 14, and again here last spring. But here recently, the Atlantic has actually started to warm back up again. And it should have, these numbers should reflect that trend because of the map that I showed you just a little while ago. All right? So, these things are kind of important. And this Atlantic here has been in a warm state overall since about 1995. So it's getting ready to flip to its cold phase here before too long. 2 to maybe 7 years. That goes back to that whole accuracy thing, right? Really pinning myself down with that. But we aren't talking about a day-to-day forecast. We're talking about something the size of the Atlantic Ocean flipping on a 20 to 30-year cycle here, all right? It's not going to be a perfect roadmap. So back in 2004, a brilliant scientist by the name of McCabe came up with this. And this may be especially for you guys. Raise your hand again for under 35, please. Keep them up there.
Watch out, Bob.
This may be the most important map that I show you all day today. This map pertains to drought frequency when the oceans are in their particular phase. All right? So the whole thing that's been perpetuated here since about 2005-ish has been this pattern right here. Cold Pacific, warm Atlantic. This is the pattern that gets us in trouble. Where you see red, that's where drought frequency is greatly increased. Where you're seeing blue, that's where drought frequency is greatly reduced. So it's really no big shock here that Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and California and Colorado have been struggling with drought during that time, or more oftentimes than not. The detour that we flipped to in the spring was this guy. The Pacific was warm, we briefly cooled the Atlantic. Look at all the blue there. Nobody has trouble with drought when that's happening. But that didn't last that long. Pacific warmed back up. In general, this is where we are currently. Still no problems for New Mexico, most of Texas, all right? And eastern Colorado, we're still doing okay. This is not happening at all up here. Pacific Northwest and Northern California is getting crushed. But these are long-term patterns that I'm talking about with this particular map, not the shorter range stuff, okay? It's the difference between weather, all right, which is what you get, and climatology, which is what you expect. Two different things here. We will go back to this phase right here shortly, on the lower right. When the Atlantic Ocean flips its script here in a few years, we will then go to this phase here for probably about another 15 before the Pacific flips its script. Drought frequency greatly reduces itself here in the south half of Texas, but look who gets bullseye again. Northeast New Mexico, Texas Panhandle, and up here in the western High Plains. And for me in Colorado, I'm in drought 75% of the time anyway. All right? But what I want you to get thinking about is that this whole El Nino thing, which has been so great and, you know, solely responsible for curing the drought and all of your problems, is really fixing to go away quickly. And nobody is talking about what happens when that happens. And that's my message for you today. Let's look at El Nino and what it's going to be doing. This is a computer model that was sampled on January 11th here. You can see the graph, which basically the dashed line is where we are going in terms of the El Nino. Okay? So where it's tapering off up there, that's essentially the El Nino that's weakening. Where you're seeing all of these lines, that's the different computer model runs over the past several days. It's headed south pretty quickly. Even if it's just a neutral status, we are past the El Nino peak, and we're going to start to see it taper off here pretty quickly. Shut this up. At any rate, you can. Did we run out of battery, maybe? I'll let you check. While we're fixing that, you can see where this El Nino has been. It was essentially the second strongest El Nino since 1950. Pretty significant, really. And you can see it starting to trend down from that peak that occurred back in December and January. Now, when we look at all these different computer models, okay, each model is going to show a particular representation on how fast it thinks this is El Nino is going to weaken. And I'm going to walk you through that and also show you a little bit of history about what happens when that happens. Good face. Thanks, Bill. This one's out of Europe. Strong El Nino, rapidly weakening to La Nina in 2016. Again, all these lines here are just different versions of that same computer model looking at the same thing. On the high end, we're up here, still basically just below El Nino status, or we are in moderate La Nina status. By June and July? Are you kidding? That is a pretty rapid transition. Right when we don't need it. This one's out of Australia, same trend. Again, you can see the spread here in the model, but in general, there's no denying that trend. This one's out of Japan. This is a 2-year forecast for you. Same trend. We are technically meeting La Nina criteria. By late July and August, we go full-blown into a moderate to strong La Nina, fall, winter of January, summer of 17, still in it to finish 17. That's the bummer about La Nina episodes. El Niños come and go over a short period of time. La Ninas, when they get here, they stay. A cold Pacific and a La Nina episode tag team to create that drought in 2011. You see why I see problems ahead? This is all of these models combined, put out by the Climate Prediction Center. The yellow line is the mean of all those models. Again, the trend is your friend when you're looking at that. That's where we're going. Some say a little sooner, other models not so much, but they all end up in the same idea. So let's look at one of those computer models here over the next several months. This model is our government model here in the United States. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. When it's bad, it's really bad. All right? When it has the pattern nailed, it's like any other model. It does okay. All right? But February, March, and April, where you see the green, that's good. That's where you get moisture. Where you see the brown, not so much. This is what the model thinks is going to happen during those 3 months, or in general, spread out over those 3 months. Okay? Remember, computer models like this don't necessarily distribute the moisture equally during those time periods. It doesn't say, oh, we're going to get this much during January, this much, and then it's all equal. It could be one giant storm, which is frequently the case here in the Western High Plains, isn't it? We either have way too much or not enough, and the climatologists or the government scientists say, well, I'll take the way too much and the not enough and divide by 2, and that's the normal. What the hell is normal? We never see normal, okay? The normal is way too much and not enough. That's how we roll around here, all right? But you can see at least through the spring, while this El Nino is still hanging around and is still of somewhat intensity, I think we're still going to do okay. Not just based off of this model, but also using my own brain up here and based through history, okay? April, May, and June. Now again, remember the moisture, the model doesn't discern when this moisture occurs. Okay, so please keep that in mind. But in general, it still keeps most of Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, Oklahoma, West Kansas, we're doing okay. But this is the area that I'm interested in right here. Because back in 2010, that drought that was so nasty started in East Texas and spread from east to west. So while central and West Texas was doing okay with moisture through a large part of 10, it shut off quickly in East Texas and spread from east to west. So this is something that I'm going to be very interested in watching as we head through the springtime. But in general, I think most of us will do okay through that. Now I might show you a little bit of evidence here in just a little bit that says, yeah, we might have a little reason to be concerned a little bit earlier. This is June, July, August. This may be related to some hurricane activity, because I believe the Atlantic and the Gulf are going to have more hurricanes this year than we've seen lately. So if we get lucky, maybe one of those hurricanes sneaks up here. Who knows? This model's job is not to forecast specific hurricanes 7 months in advance. Okay? It's an idea. But notice who's starting to get rowdy up here. Western Kansas, eastern Colorado, and that green is largely gone for most of Texas during that time. Let's look at this model. February, March, and April, same kind of thing. Green is good, brown is bad. Same type of idea, really. You're drying out things here in the lakes, Ohio Valley, Mid-Mississippi Valley, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado's okay. Most of California doing okay? April, May, June. Look who isn't green anymore. Look who's still doing okay. June, July, August. When computer models, months in advance, start to look like the thoughts that I have in my brain, based off of history, that's when I start to get really bugged. Is the model seeing something there that it should be? I think probably so. Again, look where it isn't green anymore. Way too much? Not enough? Sound familiar as far as moisture balance goes through the year? Here's another one. This model is the one that is predicting that La Nina episode to get going here in the back half of 16 and lasting through early 18. Okay? So let's look at this in the short term. This map is a mess, okay? So don't, if you're looking at this like, how do you read this thing? It's a mess. It's a global plot, but it's all we have to work with. So I'm going to walk you through it just a little bit. Obviously up here is Texas. March through May. Panhandle's okay. Most of us not dealing with any brown in that ballpark, but you can see a little bit of brown right here for far southeast Texas. Right there. Historically speaking, during a strong El Nino, the storm track rides right across the southern tier of the U.S. When that El Nino weakens, that storm track then starts to lift a little farther north. Kind of look like that's what it's doing on this model. June through August, okay. Nothing crazy in there. Might be related to some tropical moisture, whatnot, we'll see. September through October. And actually, I think this is November, I should say, up here. SON, September, October, November. Again, model looking at something that history says should be there. So what happened in 1998? Have you guys heard about that El Nino thing in 97, 98? No, really? Seriously? Yeah. For like the past year, okay? So let's see what happened in 98. This is precipitation anomalies in January of 98. So the blue, again, is where it was wet, and then those brown and yellow colors, that's where it was dry. Doing good along the Gulf Coast, East Texas, doing fine. California's in good shape for the most part, all right? Looks very similar to what's happening right now. February, doing good. In fact, even better than you were in January. Again, that looks like where the storm track was going, right along through here, all right? March, look what's creeping in East Texas. April, it's incredibly dry. May. Again, this is after that El Nino ended. The one that was so prevalent in 97 and early 98. June. July. Is there reason to be concerned when this El Nino right now quits? I think so. Not just because of the El Nino stopping, but because of the reversal to a La Nina that I believe is going to follow it. Okay? Again, working hand in glove right there. Closing thoughts. El Nino is still strong, but it's likely past its peak. I'm not too concerned about drought reappearing in the near term. Okay? I think we're still going to be okay for a little while. The end of the last strong El Nino was not kind to the southern plains in 98. It was not kind at all. Be very efficient with how you use your moisture going forward. Very efficient. La Nina likely returns later in 16 and 17, and that's the biggest reason why I'm concerned about drought returning. Plus, if you've lived in this country long enough, you know we don't stay wet that long. with the way the oceans are stacked right now, our wetter times are shorter and less frequent, and our drier times are longer and more frequent. And for you young guys, you have to adjust your thinking to that. You have to. Otherwise, you're not going to be in agriculture very long. All I want to do today is lay this out there for you guys. All right? So you can plan going forward. It's that human element thing that I was talking about. And hopefully, you'll take a little bit of this away and say, I need to at least be prepared. If nothing else, that weather guy may be wrong it may rain like crazy for the next 10 years. The sun may not come up tomorrow too. It's the future, all right? There's very few things that are exact science when it comes to future, especially when you're dealing with something as complex as weather, all right? But I believe it's something that we all need to be thinking about. Have you guys heard of any of this stuff? Have you heard of this thing? Am I just being a doomsayer today? I don't think so. Because if you look at history, this stuff has happened time and time and time again. And surprisingly, every time it happens, there are so many people that aren't prepared for it. I know I'm out of time. Any questions quickly?